Hey everybody, it's Jason Blah here, and today I want to chat with you guys a little bit about which is better for overall gains, the close grip bench press or the weighted dip. Now, a lot of people are going to be like, Jason, is that really a serious question? They're both great exercises. It's absolutely true, they are. And when you're dealing with multiple really good exercises, assuming your individual anthropometry, I totally slaughtered that word, by the way, and biomechanics and everything allow for you to effectively do the exercise, you're not going to probably see large differences in gains differences. It's probably at that point more important to focus upon your programming, your actual training, programming, progression, volume, workloads, things like that. Those are going to matter a hell of a lot more than exercise selection, particularly if you're doing very effective exercises. So I want to get that out of the way. So this is really going to be kind of a nuanced answer, because up front I'm going to tell you right now, you can probably make absolutely amazing upper body gains with either one of these. They're both fantastic. Now we get into the question of people saying, wait, why are you saying close grip bench press? You'd be surprised how many experts out there do feel the close grip bench press is a better hypertrophy tool than the wider grip bench press. And ultimately what it comes down to is the longer range of motion. And a close grip is the way I do it, is what I'm talking about shoulder width. Like my thumbs are right on the edge of the smooths. When you start going inside of that, you're dealing with really a bastardized version that bodybuilders and other silly people try to come up with as some sort of tricep exercise, when the reality is the normal close grip bench press is still very much a chest exercise and a tricep exercise and a front delt exercise. But it is easier on the shoulder joints. You're forced to use a slightly lighter weight because you are going through a longer range of motion, and therefore your workload versus recovery, as far as your capacity to recover from it, is slightly enhanced over a wide grip bench press. Now that's a point of contention, but I do feel that it is slightly superior for many people because of the amount of volumes that you can handle on it without basically chewing your shoulders up. And we all know the amount of volume and workload you can do on a weekly and monthly basis is one of the largest factors in your gains. And that's with 3 Z's, gains. So let's go into the kind of the pros and cons of it. So now that we've already established the longer range of motion, which again is usually actually really a big deal when hypertrophy is a goal, range of motion becomes a very important factor. Close grip bench press. What does it allow? Well, it's a big barbell exercise. That's a perk. That is one of the advantages. It allows for easier programming because you can micro-load. Your body weight is not really part of the equation. Now, people would say, well, what about squats? You used to recommend squats and stuff like that, because most people are squatting well above their body weight, even on their work sets. And so what you find is that minor fluctuations in body weight, because your entire body isn't necessarily part of it, just your torso as far as the weight goes, whereas on a dip, more of your body gets involved, right? Some of these big upper body exercises, more of your body weight gets involved than like on a squat or a deadlift, and you're lifting relatively lighter loads. So fluctuations in body weight can matter a lot. They can matter a lot. And with the close grip bench press, what you have is the ability to tightly control programming. You can tightly control range of motion so that you can ensure consistency, and it's easy to microload. In other words, again, there's fluctuations in individual plates, and we could argue about that, but odds are your 300-pound bench press, even with crappy plates at a commercial gym, you're still going to be within a couple pounds. You know, well, we could argue about micro plates and micro loading. Now, I use calibrated plates for my stuff, so I don't have these issues. But you have consistency in the weight and the workload. You can tightly control and program that. Furthermore, you have the ability to very closely control range of motion. When your elbows lock, you're locked out, and when the bar touches your chest, you're at the bottom. In other words, there's almost no consistency problems as far as range of motion. You can ensure the exact same range of motion on every rep, on every set for years on end. So from a programming perspective, and that's kind of the point, we talk about the programming being one of the more important parts. From a programming perspective, the close grip bench press is superior because you can control the load perfectly and monitor it perfectly. and you can control the range of motion perfectly with no variations. That's a big perk in favor of it. Those are its advantages, in addition to the fact that it carries over much better perfectly to the wider grip bench press, which is a contested lift in strength and conditioning and a competitive lift in at least one sport. And it's kind of, again, America's favorite lift. So there's also that cultural aspect that you have to think about too, and a situation, as far as the social environment, people asking how much you bench, things like that. There's that to consider also. Now, when it comes to total muscle utilized, the dip is a superior exercise. Meaning, if those other factors were not there, we could argue that the dip is a slightly superior hypertrophy exercise for two reasons. Number one, it utilizes more muscles. Right, your actual lats and things get used more. Some of your stabilizers in your core get used a bit more. Therefore, you have the involvement of more total muscle in the body. All right, now if your goal is to get big, getting more total muscle involved is an advantage. Right, that's a big deal. The other thing is that it allows for a slightly deeper range of motion. When people ask me about dumbbells, they say, what's the advantage of dumbbells for chest exercises? Which I don't like to think of them as that. I like to think of them as vertical versus horizontal presses. But the people who are concerned about body parts like that, we could argue that dumbbells can be better because of the stretch reflex. You can get a deeper range of motion. Now, ironically, no one trains them that way. All these bodybuilders at the gym and other people, 90% of the time, they don't even use a full range of motion with the dumbbell. So they're missing the only real advantage, because it doesn't allow for even loading. But what it does allow for is a deeper myotatic or stretch reflex in your pectorals at the bottom. Well, the dip replicates the exact same thing. Why? Because your hands can go through the line of your rib cage. You can go deeper. So in other words, you not only have more muscles involved, it allows for a slightly superior range of motion. So again, from the ability of the exercise to stimulate growth, I think the dip has a very, very small advantage because of those two factors as far as making total gains. So what's the downside there? The downside is that, watch me doing it right there. Other than your feel and getting used to hitting the same spot, you have a somewhat ambiguous range of motion. Well, given that it gets harder the deeper you go, that ambiguous range of motion can make tracking from a programming perspective more difficult, along with daily fluctuations in body weight. I mean, we don't weigh the same amount every day. I easily, throughout the week, fluctuate 5 or 6 pounds in body weight, right? I easily do. So do I know, am I dipping, like I've got 80 pounds on there a lot of days I'm doing sets of fives with, like last week. Well, I weighed 219 the lightest day last week, but I've been as high as 225. So how much weight am I dipping? Am I dipping 299? Am I dipping 305? I don't know. I mean, I would have to step on the scale before I do my dips every time to actually know. So minor programming differences can come from that, but the range of motion is a big one also. It's ambiguous. Now, what we have to consider there is that from a safety perspective, is that a problem? Yes, it is physically possible, depending upon your individual biomechanics, right? For you to go low enough on a dip to injure yourself. A properly executed bench press, again, where you don't touch the upper chest, where you go to the lower chest correctly on your close grip, it isn't really possible for most people, again, depending upon limb lengths and torso size, for most people to go deep enough in a range of motion in the proper bar path to injure their shoulders. Now, there are exceptions to that, so I say the vast overwhelming majority of people. That doesn't mean everybody. So the difference there is that there is that different risk of injury, right? Also from going too low. So there's a safety component. Also, some people's sternum is not built to do the dips due to the stress that's put on it. There are people who seem to have a genetic predisposition towards sternum injuries from the dip. And if you get a lot of pain in the center of your chest when you do a dip, you're probably one of those people. Proceed with caution. So those are the downsides to it. Now, I happen to use both exercises right now because I think they're fantastic exercises. It gives me a little bit of exercise variation. I personally use both. But what I would say to people, those are your pros and cons of each one. If you really want to be nuanced and really look at them, which I don't think we all need to do that, then there's your answer. There is pros and cons to each of them for the purposes of hypertrophy. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.